The first ray of sunlight touches the top of the Palatine Hill, bathing the marble and terracotta rooftops in gold. In Rome, a new day begins, but not for everyone in the same way. In the upper floors of the imperial palaces, the silence is almost absolute, broken only by the whisper of silk tunics and the discreet movement of servants and slaves. Here, at the center of power of the greatest empire the world has ever known, the most powerful man on earth awakens. The air is heavy, not just with the opulent luxury of mosaics and frescoes, but with the weight of millions of lives, the fate of distant legions, and the constant pressure of conspiracies forming in the shadows. For the Roman emperor, sunrise brings not only light but the monumental responsibility of governing the known world. His day is not merely a succession of hours, but a continuous performance on the stage of history. When we think of Roman emperors, our minds are flooded with images of excess and decadence. We imagine endless banquets, extravagant parties, orgies, and a life of absolute leisure punctuated by acts of whimsical tyranny. While extravagance and, at times, cruelty were real. To reduce an emperor's life to this is to ignore the overwhelming reality of his routine. The truth is, the position of emperor was a job, an incredibly dangerous, demanding, and bureaucratic job. Behind the facade of divinity and absolute power was a man burdened by a mountain of responsibilities. Each day was an exhaustive exercise in administration, audiences, judgments, and religious rituals. Far from being an idle tyrant, the emperor was the CEO, the supreme judge, and the high priest of a colossal empire. His routine was much more like that of a modern executive than a fairy tale despot. The Principate, the system of government begun by Augustus in 27 BC, concentrated unprecedented power in the hands of a single individual. The emperor, or princeps first citizen, was the commander-in-chief of all legions, the final arbiter of law, and the mediator between the gods and the Roman people. He lived and worked on the Palatine, in a palace complex that served as both his residence and the administrative heart of the empire. The stability of Rome depended directly on the emperor's competence and dedication. His life was a constant balancing act. He had to project an image of divine power and authority, while also dedicating himself to a relentless administrative routine, which was essential to keep the vast imperial machine running. The emperor's day began before sunrise. After a frugal breakfast of often just bread and water, he began the salutatio mattutina. This was no simple social reception. It was the first and most important display of power of the day. Members of the senatorial elite, knights, foreign delegations, and common citizens lined up for hours to be received by the emperor. It was a ritual where loyalties were reaffirmed, petitions were made, and the emperor, acting as a universal patron, distributed favors and heard the concerns of his subjects. Immediately after the salutatio, the workday began in earnest. The emperor would meet with his consilium principis, a council of trusted advisors. Together, they reviewed dispatches from provincial governors, debated new laws, planned military campaigns, and made decisions that would affect millions of people. The emperor was at the center of a vast information network, reading reports, dictating letters to his secretaries, ab episcopus, and signing decrees. It was an intense desk job that demanded a remarkable capacity for focus and management. The afternoon was often dedicated to his duties as supreme judge. The emperor presided over trials, both for appeals from lower courts and for cases involving important state figures. These hearings could be long and exhausting, requiring a deep knowledge of the law and careful judgment. His decision was final and irrevocable. Following his judicial duties, the emperor fulfilled his role as Pontifex Maximus, the high priest. He presided over religious ceremonies, performed sacrifices to ensure the favor of the gods, pax deorum, and oversaw the priestly colleges. Religion was a cornerstone of the Roman state, and the emperor's piety was seen as essential for Rome's security and prosperity. These public activities were crucial to maintaining his image as a leader chosen by the gods. Night brought the event for which emperors are most famous, the dinner cena. While some banquets were indeed extravagant, for most working emperors, dinner was a continuation of work by other means. It was a political tool. The guest list was carefully curated. Influential senators, generals, and diplomats were invited to discuss state affairs in a less formal setting. Alliances were forged, information was exchanged, and the emperor used the occasion to evaluate the character and loyalty of his subordinates. After dinner, the emperor could finally retire to his private quarters. But even there, the work often continued. For the emperor, the day rarely ended. The weight of the empire was a burden he carried even in his most private moments. Our understanding of the imperial routine comes from multiple sources. Biographers like Suetonius and Tacitus gave us detailed, though often biased, accounts of the early emperors' lives. The letters of Pliny the Younger to Emperor Trajan show the micromanagement involved in administering a province, with Trajan personally responding to issues about building aqueducts and regulating fire brigades. The ruins of the palaces on the Palatine Hill reveal the scale of the imperial residence, which was not just a home but a complex of offices, audience halls, and courts. The emperor's life was a perpetual ritual. Every action, from the way he dressed to the way he spoke in public, was carefully choreographed to project power and legitimacy. The technology of his time, such as the impressive network of Roman roads, was what made his governance possible, allowing his orders and armies to move swiftly across the empire. By deconstructing the myth of the Roman emperor as a simple hedonistic tyrant, we find a much more complex and, in a way, more human figure. We find an individual at the pinnacle of power, but also a prisoner of his own position. The daily routine of an emperor reveals the immense administrative intelligence, political creativity, and extraordinary adaptability required to govern one of the most complex empires in history. Their story reminds us that absolute power does not mean absolute freedom. On the contrary, it often means an absolute burden. The image of the emperor, sitting in his study late at night, reading reports by the light of an oil lamp, is a powerful testament to the pressure and loneliness of leadership. It's a lesson that transcends ancient Rome and resonates to this day, showing us that behind every crown, there is the weight of a world to be governed.